The 1987 Honda CRX Si, the first of the 20 Hondas I've owned in my life. I purchased this car in 1991 in my first year of college. It somehow already had 70,000 miles on it in just 4 years. This car kicked off not only my love affair with Honda, but arguably Gen X as a whole. It packed the 1.5-liter single overhead cam D15A3 engine with 91 horsepower and 93 torque. Of course, it was based off the third generation Civic. Those numbers may not seem like a lot, but at 1,900 pounds, its performance will surprise you. These 80s cars were before severe government safety mandates that would make a Civic-sized car like this 1,000 pounds heavier in 10 years. Unfortunately, the images of the CRX in this video aren't mine, but they are an exact copy. The key point of my video series on my Hondas is to also explain to older and newer generations why Honda was the car for Gen X starting in the late 80s. Let me explain why. I paid just $500 for my first high school car in 1989. It was a 1985 Ford Escort. This thing only had 30,000 miles on it. This generation of Ford Escort not only existed at the same time and year as the CRX and Civics, but it also had the same price range, so they are directly comparable. The CRX had a 0 to 60 of 8 seconds and a quarter mile at 16.3. That's where the 1,900 pounds factors in. It also featured a .83 lateral G, which even by today's standards is pretty good, but for the 80s, it was fantastic. This is why the CRX was called the go-kart of the 80s, like the Miata was for the 90s. The Ford Escort with its larger 1.6-liter engine had a 0 to 60 of 12.4 seconds and a quarter mile of 18.8 seconds. Throw in a lateral G of .62 and I think those numbers simply leave you speechless today. I can't even think of a modern comparison. I recall the Escort having issues just driving up hills. Being a poor young punk in the days of bumping, I couldn't afford 15-inch subs in either car. But I put my $3.05 per hour pay from Taco Bell into a CD player, amp, and good old Pioneer 6x9s in both cars. Funny enough, the Escort had the first Sony CD player ever built for a car with no technology, so every time I hit a bump on the road it would skip. By the time I bought a CD player for the CRX, they had developed multi-sampling so they didn't skip as much. The point being is that I was doing light modification to both, and the difference in quality of build was shocking between the two. The Ford was quote-unquote engineered with absolute wire chaos. Everything was literally open wires that were barely managed. When you pulled the carpet up off the floorboards, wires were just running across the floor. When you cracked open the Honda for the 80s, you witnessed an amazing display of compartmentalized engineering. Everything would run in channels using quality connectors. Modules fit like Legos everywhere on the car. By the time I had to basically give away the Escort for the CRX, it was only 5 years old, had less than 50,000 miles on it, and was burning oil from a blown head gasket, and nothing else was working on the thing. By the time I sold the CRX in 1993, it had over 100,000 miles on it, banging off the red line for years and pulling the e-brake to drift around corners all the time. The only thing wrong with it by then was that I had roasted the clutch and then traded it in with it barely able to even catch a gear. But that's the point. I beat the hell out of that CRX for several years, and it took everything I gave it. This thing has to be the best bang for the buck car of the 80s. The lesson here is why Gen X loved Honda so much in these years. This is a template for pretty much direct model comparison between American cars and Japanese car at this time. Simply put, Japanese cars came out generations ahead of American cars, and it took American car companies decades to catch back up and never truly did even in 2026. Boomers and older generations still don't understand this. I still hear Buy American even though none of the cars have been produced in America for decades now, and funny enough, most Hondas are now. They are simply stuck in their generation, worshiping the cars that were good long ago in their youth and not updating their paradigm to modern reality. Thus started my 30-year relationship with Honda, having owned 20 different models.